Hello, this is Branko Malic of Tribune. In this podcast, we'll focus on some daily problems of day-to-day politics and things happening currently in the world, of course, with an attempt to through it all make a general and I would say more essential point. Because on Kali Tribune we kind of laid aside this journalistic approach to things because it is not really feasible to be enacted. The problem I want to talk about today is the so-called internet censorship or internet clampdown on so-called alternative media. There is to say in advance, there is a point. There is a real general point to be made about this, and that's why I'm talking about it. Although it wouldn't be surprising if Kali Tribune would get into problems for this in the context of this kind of like coordinated removal of some websites and some content from social media and so on and so forth. To say in advance, one part of this general point would be can be summed in the sentence "good riddance." That is, if alt media, or what is commonly self-understood as alt media, would go down completely, that would be not only not a great loss, it could be, I think it could be argued that it would be a gain, and not least for the people who are making them, people who genuinely believe in what they do in this sphere, because they are mostly severely deluded in one very specific sense that is made possible by the inner nature of internet. Now, we talked about it a lot, about this problematics of internet-based knowledge, but now let's, for the sake of introduction, just remind ourselves what is this about without media. Namely, last week some of the content creators on internet and media outlets, like, first of all, the biggest and paradigmatic one, which everybody, admitting this or not, copies, Infowars, was banned on some, taken down on some social networks. That is to say, personal account on Twitter of Alex Jones was terminated, Facebook, and then the very website Infowars was down for some short period because of probably hacking attack, because once your site is hosted privately, when you, as for instance Kali Tribune is, when it is not, i.e. it is not hosted by WordPress or some of that public services, they can't, nobody can just shut you down without some amount of hacking involved. But as I can see, Infowars is now back up. And this happened to some other internet personas, outlets and so on, and it was obviously coordinated, it's ongoing. And now, of course, we have the reaction that this is finally shutting down of free speech and technocracy going in on people and so on and so forth. And this is more or less where the things stand now. Now, I spoke and wrote about alt media. I did not, those who follow Kali Tribune know that I am myself not innocent of being involved in alt media, and that Kali Tribune is not considered to be alt media in this sense. Now, in this censorship, internet censorship clampdown, I think that Kali Tribune would be also shut down very easily, for the sole reason it's very easy to get in the crosshairs of censors simply because this is the site where you, for instance, will never see a word homophobe used, and you will, on the contrary, hear me a lot of times say that this is, for instance, to call somebody homophobe is one of those more or less soft totalitarian tools for engineering of language in order to engineer people's thoughts, and very, very successful at that. And just taking this for example would probably get the site taken down, but this is not the point we like to address here. The point we like to address is that taking down, for instance, this site or that site would not be such a great loss, would be nothing tragic, because you have to understand, nothing that is built on internet, that is substantially internet, part of internet, can last longer than a click. It was uploaded in a click, it can be removed with a click, and so on. And so it is applicable to everything. There is one other thing though. As Bulgakov said, manuscripts don't burn. I think that this pronouncement is deeply correct, and that things that have value, the substantial things, are offline, made offline, and internet is only media where you kind of like show them to other people, communicate them to other people, but they can be communicated in other ways. If they are really substantial, they'll be communicated maybe 50 years after they were created. I'm talking about a book, an article, a poem, a story, or a painting, such things. So, bringing down alt media, which will not, I think, happen. What will happen will be that good deal, if this clampdown continues, good deal of those media will move to platforms hosted in countries like Russia and so on, and they will just get reinforced in their delusions about, for instance, this particular country I just mentioned, whereas their enemies will be reinforced in their delusions that all this alt media conundrum was some kind of a Russian plot to get Donald Trump into American office, which is completely idiotic. There is no discussion that there was some meddling of Russians, which is normal, relatively normal in this power plays of nations. Only Americans are not used to it, because most of the time they have exclusivity in meddling in elections in other countries. But to say that Donald Trump was hacked into office by Russians is a conspiracy theory on the level of John Birch Society, anti-communist conspiracy theories. And what is interesting is that now you can, if you follow this mainstream left-leaning outlets, you'll see people quoting and linking the video of Yuri Bezmenov, that was supposed Russian KGB agent defect into America, into Canada, I think, originally, who was endorsed by John Birch Society, talking about how feminists are useful idiots, for instance, and this new left students and professors through which Kremlin of Soviet times is trying to destabilize USA. Now he was used, of course, by American conservatives of John Birch Society, Variety, and others to point out that this is already happening now. Their leftist opponents are using the same guy to the videos of the same guy from the late 80s, I think, early 90s, to prove that American conservatives are in fact Russian stooges. So this only goes to show what little worth there is in all this noise. Nothing would be lost with losing Infowars and plethora of other alt media sites. It is a problem. Censorship is a problem. Internet is a place where you can express dissent, and losing this opportunity is not something to be happy about, but and this opportunity will not be lost. It's very, I don't know, can internet be controlled in such a way, but the very idea that people in this alt media started to consider internet as a site of public debate is telling about their grip at reality that is extremely weakened, because internet is not that, especially social networks are not public square, they are virtual public square. This is not same as the public square, this is not even close, this is imitation of public square, because everything that goes on internet, if it has a political purpose, should be as soon as possible transferred to a real world, to spatio-temporal continuum in which I'm talking now and you're listening to me. On the other hand, let's talk something about free speech in alternative media. Now, I wrote some articles. I have a series that started, but I haven't finished it yet, the second part of it, about war in Yugoslavia and how they interpret the war in Yugoslavia through lens of their favorite conspiracy about Syrian war. Well, I can say that this, for instance, this conspiracy theory, this notion of USA as an empire that is completely uncontested, that everything that ever happened was just one step into making real this what I call globalist or imperialist American domination. This is something that cannot be contested. And for instance, the idea that alternative media are indeed heavily influenced by Russian politics is something that you cannot speak about in those circles. When I say don't speak about, not that you will get into debate, you will be excluded momentarily, automatically, on a switch, which is, as we said in the beginning, normal for internet. This is in the nature of internet. And to share a bit of a personal experience, I was excluded from the, let's say, internet alt media platform, and thank God for that, because it was at a time when I started realizing that it is bogus, that people are not insincere, but that they are deluded and not very apt in what they are doing, and that they are very heavily influenced by Russians, for better or for worse, mainly for worse from what I've seen. the very fact that one of their number, one of the, let's say, content creators, bloggers, whatever, how you want to call it, have attacked me in a very ugly way, I mean, and childish way, and got a beating, verbal beating, let's say, that was in a very, very, let's say, immature episode, which I would rather that it never happened. This very fact excluded me automatically from any kind of having a platform or having a participation in this platform. This very fact. The very fact that party line was broken, that somehow somebody could get an impression that people in this media platform arguing among themselves was enough to shut me out completely without discussion. And this happened to one other gentleman participating in this media platform for the same reason, absolutely the same thing. This is not censorship. This is a purging of anything that can be inimical to the world image they are creating, because Altmedia, as all essentially internet-based intellectual, not outlets, but creation centers of creation of ideas, has a purpose of constructing the systems in which identities in which those people can live as alternative, as virtual personas. And this is why this all exists. And this is why, for instance, they can claim that, for instance, war in Yugoslavia was an American plot, which it wasn't, although there was very strange instances, bits and pieces of information that can tell you that something was afoot underneath, but not what they say it was, because what they say is that it was precisely the thing they imagine and wish it to be. And this is the purpose of alternative media. Wishful thinking, in the sense that these wishes about what the world is can be fulfilled. And if you are a real person, injecting even 1% of reality that contradicts this, you will be excluded momentarily, not because these people are evil, although they are customarily bad characters, in my opinion, very unstable, most of them, if very egoistic. If you try to inject something like this, you will be excluded by the nature of this ecosystem. It has to act like that. And Altmedia is, in this sense, in my opinion, and I'm not saying this for a dramatic impact, it is more closed, more totalitarian, if you like, and more authoritarian than anything mainstream media can come up with, because mainstream media, newspapers, radio shows, television, they originate from pre-internet times, and they still have nooks and crannies that are relatively open to traditional contradictions in discussions, in dissent. Altmedia does not have this. Altmedia is a total identity, systemic identity. Either you are part of system, or you are not part of, or you don't exist. This is how they work. So having this taken down is an opportunity for content creators in Altmedia to look back. For instance, if their lives, what they consider life of work, has been taken down, they have opportunity to look back at what they were doing for years, maybe, and to realize how deluded they were, because most of them are. They are deluded by the nature of the media they used and the impulse that is driving them. And this impulse is system creation. It is the impulse of postmodern man to make himself virtual, although a good deal of those those outlets is devoted to criticizing precisely that, but they are doing this. And so there is not much to cry about. Of course, the censorship in general, not only in internet, is something that affects everybody. This much is true. Everything that is not part of that ideological monolith we have for the rest is to be excluded if only possible, and it is very easy to accomplish this on internet. But the real battlefield is out of internet, and anybody who wants to resist this should always have an eye on doing this offline. And one of the main things is, in my opinion, and if I can be so bold as to offer some positive that is affirmative guidelines what to do, is to stay free, to keep your minds free from the ideologically or systemically polluted language, from the terms like homophobia, transphobia, dysphobia or that phobia and such things. To not to let yourself be infected by words, let your thoughts be infected furthermore, and then you be infected by astroturf, told, accepting these things as normal. This is the main thing to do. And the other main thing to do is to constantly bother others with this. People who are close to you, because people who are not close to you will not listen. People listen when you have an outrageous idea, like for instance idea that one man penetrating the other through his anus is not performing normal sexual act. If you come out with such an outrageous idea to somebody who doesn't know you that well, he or she will put you in the mold of, or in the drawer, or put a label on you of some kind of neo-fascist or whatever. They already on a queue they have. When you have homophobe, you have what kind of man he is, and they can go proceed with their lives in tranquility because they know nothing has been challenged. But once somebody they knew to be a good man, to be okay, to not to be violent or hateful, says something like this, they could just start to think. I know very well. I know this very well from my experience. I know the certain look you get from such people, a look of interest, of fear, but also of interest, because you touch something in them that they already feel very strongly but cannot express, and maybe are expressing everything in contradiction to it, but that's not important. It's important what inside. And these are things you can do. This is very little, but we are little people too. And this idea of having some kind of internet movement that will change the world is idea of egomaniacs and alt media. What is called alt media is more nothing else but egomaniac media. Egomaniac in a very, not in a moral sense, but in the ontological sense. It is the media for system creation, for creating a virtual personality systems that cannot be contested, that have to be completely self-identical with no dissenting information entering them, no wrong inputs, and so on and so forth. And not having them would not be such a bad thing, but in conclusion we can always remind ourselves on the fact that the situation is such that we have ideological monolith or systemic monolith, political, cultural, monolith of inverted values that has to be imposed of everybody, so nobody is safe from this censorship. But there are worse things that can happen, and censoring of alt media is not one of those. And with these thoughts, I will conclude this podcast just with an announcement that maybe 2 or 3 weeks from now we are getting back in videos, and this time around they will be much better in quality because we are updating our technical resources. So we'll go into reading some interesting texts, or maybe commenting on some events that can be followed in video form, and so on and so forth. Anyways, thank you for your attention, thank you for your support, those who support us materially, but those who support us by reading us. All the best. This is Branko Malic from Kali Tribune signing out.